happened to you, he said this to the European Union in Parliament, as they're jeering him and booing him, he says, the reason this happened to you is because you sold this to people as an economic union, when what you were doing all along was a political union. Even when people in France and elsewhere held referendums and said they didn't want any of your political union, you did it anyway. Every crisis that the European Union has created, whether it's the economic crisis or the immigration crisis, and now here again we see with Brexit, they always argue for closer political union. And that's what this has always been about. And he called them on that fundamental lie. And let me tell you something. The Trans-Pacific Partnership is not about free trade. It is about managed trade. And when you hear a liar like George Will going on the talk shows and saying, oh, look at all these economists, everything that the Republican Party has been about, our central premise here has been about free trade. But to say it is not free trade, it is managed. We already know how this works. We've seen the European Union, we've seen NAFTA, we know that they are building blocks, we know that we're going to the next level. And I have to say to you, on the issues that you don't agree with Donald Trump on, just as I've looked at this, you're not going to have a constitution, you're not going to have an America if you don't stop the globalism. Worldwide, people are pushing back against globalism. So we're going to talk about that tonight on the Nightly News. Just before I go to the caller, let me read you this paragraph as well from the Wall Street Journal. They say, it amounts to a wholesale rejection of long-standing Republican orthodoxy, and it leaves the party with a candidate arguing against the very policies most GOP leaders have enacted and supported. He spoke longingly about an 18th century economic policy when he said our original Constitution did not even have an income tax. Instead, it had tariffs. Where have you heard that? We've talked about that many times. He's saying exactly what the people need to hear. Stay with us. When we come back, we're going to go to as many of your calls as we can, starting with Rob in Mississippi. We'll be right back. I want to get to Rob in Mississippi first. Real quickly before we do, I just want to let you know that we have the InfoWars Select Storable Food Special, 20 to 40% off select foods at InfoWarsStore.com. That is back. That's a massive discount that you'll find there. And, of course, that's in response to that FEMA report, and we're going to have a special report on that tonight on the InfoWars Nightly News about how they war-gamed this and said, well, you know, what if this were to happen, or this were to happen, or this were to happen? Looking at it and saying, well, we got a 395% increase in food prices. They called it the food chain reaction. Food chain reaction. Get it? It's a simulation. But, of course, it's just a simulation, right? Except it's a simulation with all these inputs, these disruptive inputs that we see them doing as a matter of policy. Massive migration and other things. So they're basically wargaming what they're doing to us and then coming out the bottom line saying, you know, this might result in a 400% increase in food prices. So we put this back as a special 20 to 40% off InfoWars Select Storable Food at InfoWarsStore.com. Let's go to your calls right now. Rob in Mississippi. Go ahead, Rob.
Hey, how you doing? Got out of the military a while ago. My wife stayed in. I was talking to her last night. She's actually deployed right now. And she said something that concerned me. Basically said with the upcoming election, they put out a detail, and I asked a question for them, saying that they're only taking males, but for 2 weeks up to a month before the election, to include the election, they're going to do a security detail.
So what do you make of that when you say that they're going to do a security detail before the election? What is... I don't...
It concerns me because in the past, they've used her, they've used them. They took security detail for the Super Bowl, but I've never heard them use military for security detail for the election.
Well, that long. Okay, centered around the election. I understand. I didn't get that at first. Okay, that's very interesting, isn't it? Very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
2 weeks, a month. What are they? Along with everything with what's going on with Trump, what are they planning? You know.
Well, absolutely. And it truly is unprecedented. We've never had anybody speaking so plainly. We've never had anybody who is focused on how globalism is destroying us. And it is not simply Donald Trump. I mean, we see it with Nigel Farage. We see it with all these other countries in Europe. We see it unraveling because people understand what's going on. And we are at the very last opportunity to shut this thing down. If they go to the next stage of consolidation, it is going to be so much harder to get our freedom back. The more consolidated government gets, the worse it gets. And they're about to consolidate this into a world government with these trade partnerships that they're doing between the U.S. and Europe and the U.S. and Asia. Well, that's very important information, Rob. I certainly hope that they're not planning something Let's go to Sarge in Alabama. Go ahead, Sarge.
Hey, how you doing today? I just love your show. I appreciate how you pick up for Alex.
Well, thank you. Thank you for listening. Go ahead.
If I could for a moment, I'm in the outskirts of Montgomery. I moved up here from Destin a year ago, and it's like moving into a different world as far as the media is concerned. And what I'm talking about is the NASA-type control rooms the local medias represent. You know, let's go to our Washington correspondent who's in the next room, and of course they don't say that. But down here in rural America where the rubber meets the road, you know, it's like cutting through a 10-foot steel wall with a 12-inch bar chainsaw to get people to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'd like to say is the local media here actually, you know, represents itself to be doing such a great thing by bringing money to Selma, by keeping the racial divide alive. It's crazy. You know, this is like a different world from Destin when you listen to the media.
It truly is. It truly is a divide and conquer. I'm sorry we're out of time. Sorry to the other callers. And if you don't believe that it is divide and conquer, that they're worried about their political careers and their appearance more than anything else, look at the takeaway from Benghazi. Got people dying, and they're talking about their known fake narrative about it, having them change clothes multiple times because they're concerned about how it looks. Join us tonight, InfoWars Nightly News, 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.